I will be ranking all 15 live-action Star Wars movies and TV seasons. So let's begin. In last place, we have The Book of Boba Fett. This series does so many things wrong that it somehow managed to get into my last place spot. For one, I find the arc that Boba Fett goes on to not only be uninteresting, but poorly executed. He goes from being this cold-blooded murderer in the original trilogy to changing his entire worldview after the Sarlacc pit event. I understand that traumatizing events can change people, but this series does not put in the legwork to show us that change. He just changes instantly. The whole conflict between Boba Fett and the Pikes was terrible. The Pikes, to this day, may be the weakest opposing faction in all of Star Wars. And yes, that includes the First Order. The entirety of Boba Fett's crew has weak motivations for what they're doing. The best part of the show was easily the world building the series did with the Tusken Raiders. In 2 episodes, this show fleshed out an entire culture and people within that culture, and that deserves to be applauded. One of the larger issues with this series is that 5 of the 7 episodes of a show titled The Book of Boba Fett do not feature Boba Fett at all. Chapter 5 is literally all about the Mandalorian, and you don't see Boba Fett once. And in Chapter 6, you see Boba Fett for maybe a minute, and he doesn't say anything. The Luke scenes were neat, but again, this isn't the place for that. The biggest reason why this show is in last place is because of the reunion between Mando and Grogu. It happened way too soon after The Mandalorian, and even worse, it didn't happen in the show called The Mandalorian Season 3. The finale of this series derailed the finale of The Mandalorian Season 2, and because of that, this show gets last place. In 14th place, we have The Phantom Menace. This is by far my least favorite Star Wars movie. I find all of the characters in this movie to be flat and uninteresting. Qui-Gon occasionally has some interesting things to say, but it's all centered around the idea that Anakin is the Chosen One, and I despise the Chosen One prophecy. My largest problem with this movie is that none of the characters show any emotion throughout the movie besides Jar Jar and Anakin. And I know some of you are gonna say that was the point George Lucas was going for, but I don't care if it was his intention, I still hate it. The Battle of Naboo is fun for the most part, but I hate the part of the battle where Anakin accidentally blows up the Trade Federation ship. It bothers me to an immense level that people call Rey Mary Sue, but completely forgive Anakin accidentally blowing up a command ship. And no, simply saying he's the Chosen One is not a good excuse. The characters in this movie are weak, and that is why it's number 14. At number 13, we have Rogue One: A Star Wars Story. This movie gets praised mostly for its final battle, and I totally agree, the final battle is great. I loved the grittiness of the Battle of Scarif, and we all know how awesome the last few minutes are, where Vader shows up and Leia gets the plans. So while I love the last part of the movie, the problems I have with this movie are literally everything else. I find all the characters in this movie to be incredibly weak, or pretty much most of the characters. Jyn Erso is a flat character who doesn't get much development. Her entire arc is not giving a shit about anything, then her dad dies, then she wants to sacrifice her life for the rebellion. I find that arc and the way it was executed to be poorly done. Cassian Andor is somewhat interesting, but they didn't do much with him besides hint at his backstory when he talks to Jyn. And while K2SO is funny, the rest of the cast I find to be boring and forgettable. I always ask people who love this movie to name the entirety of the Rogue One crew, and they can almost never do it. That says a lot about the characters if you cannot name half of them. In 12th place, we have Attack of the Clones. There are 2 major problems I have with this movie. The first is that the entire conflict of this movie is so poorly explained to us. A bunch of systems are seceding from the Republic, and we are never told why. We just need to accept that there is a war starting, and besides Palpatine being a puppet master, we are never told why millions of people are going to war. Also, this movie highlights more than any of the prequels how dumb the Jedi are, and I hate that. I do not care if it was Lucas's intention to make the Jedi unlikable and stupid. He did that, and I hate it. The other part of this movie that blows is the first half of the Anakin and Padme scenes. Every scene these two share with each other, up to the point where Anakin starts begging Padme, is dangerously cringe. But where this movie gets points for me is that once Anakin and Padme leave for Tatooine, I actually really like the movie. If we can just accept the fact that Anakin and Padme somehow fell in love in the first half of the movie, the entire subplot of Anakin find his mother I find to be extremely powerful. The Battle of Geonosis is fun to watch. I love a lot about this battle, except for the lightsaber fight though. I hate the fight between Dooku and the rest of the Jedi. Overall, this movie has a lot of dumb shit and a lot of really cool shit, but the dumb shit outweighs the cool shit. In 11th place, we have The Rise of Skywalker. The stuff in this movie that really works is pretty much any scene with Rey and Kylo Ren. I think Rey was actually at her best in this movie. I love the scenes with her, and her entire arc I find to be underrated in the Star Wars franchise. Kylo Ren continues to be the best part of this trilogy. I love his redemption scene with Han Solo so much, and every second we see of Ben Solo is a pure gem. Now what sucks about this movie is pretty much everything else. This movie absolutely butchered Finn as a character, and it pains me to see that. Palpatine's return is stupid and worst of all, not even explained. Rey being a Palpatine is dumb, and I hate that they retconned her being a nobody. And my single least favorite thing in all of Star Wars is in this movie, and that is the dumb-ass Sith fleet that has Death Star destroyers. I cannot emphasize how much I hate the Sith fleet. Overall, this movie stumbles in a lot of ways, but the stuff it gets right, it really gets right. In 10th place, we have Solo: A Star Wars Story. This movie to me is the definition of mid-Star Wars. There's nothing I really dislike about the movie, but there's nothing I really like either. To me, it's simply just a fun action-adventure movie with a guy named Han Solo. I think Alden Ehrenreich did a fine job as Han Solo. I have no complaints there. Donald Glover also did a fine job as Lando. The rest of the cast is fine. Since I have an absolutely massive crush on Emilia Clarke, that makes this movie a bit more enjoyable to me. But again, this movie is just pure Star Wars fun. You're not gonna make me emotional watching this movie, but you're not gonna get me angry either. In 9th place, we have Obi-Wan Kenobi. Obi-Wan was a tough one for me to place, because there is so much in this series that I love. I thought the first and last episodes were some of the best episodes of Star Wars TV. The character arc that Obi-Wan went on was so powerful. I loved seeing him have to face and overcome his trauma. Pretty much every scene with Darth Vader was absolute gold, and I love the way young Leia was portrayed in this series. But where the series really struggled was with the execution of a lot of things. The action wasn't great for a lot of the show. The cinematography was straight up bad at some points, and while I enjoyed Reva and her character arc, it felt so out of place in a show called Obi-Wan Kenobi. I also can't ignore how awful that 4th episode was. So even though there is so much in the series that I love, I can't put it any higher than 9th because of how much some of it disappointed me. In 8th place, we have Revenge of the Sith. We're at the point now in my list where I pretty much love the rest of the stuff. Anakin is leagues better in this movie than he is in Attack of the Clones. I actually feel like Hayden does a great job here. Anakin's entire descent into the dark side is fascinating to watch, and what happens afterwards is tense and well executed. My favorite part of the movie is actually the Battle of Coruscant in the beginning. It is the only time in this trilogy we really see Anakin and Obi-Wan act like brothers, and their attempt to rescue the Chancellor is awesome. Where this movie struggles for me is convincing me why Anakin would turn to the dark side. I get that he fears Padme's death, so that entire part makes sense, but this movie does not do the legwork to convince me that he would go to murder the entire Jedi Order and betray everything he knows and loves because of Padme. Overall, this movie mostly works for me, and that's why I love so much of it, but it struggles in a few places, and that's why it's number 8. In 7th place, we have The Force Awakens. I love this movie so much. I'll admit I have major nostalgia for this movie. When it came out, I was in high school, and I watched this movie over and over again. I just love the characters in this movie. I love Finn and Rey in this movie and their dynamic. This is also the only movie that gets Finn right, so I appreciate that. A lot of people continue to hate Rey, which is fine, but I adore her in this movie. Kylo Ren is also introduced, and he's one of my favorite Star Wars characters. He's just so well acted and written in this movie. I love how his character mirrors Anakin in a lot of ways. Han Solo is also great. Seeing him as an older man who struggled in life but is still a loving father is a great arc for this character. Where this movie stinks is with the world building. The film does an awful job at explaining what the First Order is, why they exist, what the Resistance is, why they exist, and what is the Republic. The movie completely glosses over all of that. But because I love pretty much all of the character work in this movie, it's number 7 on my list. At number 6 is A New Hope. This is a perfect Star Wars movie. The characters are great, the world building is great, the story is great, everything about this movie is perfect. But Goldman, why is this movie not number 1 if it's a perfect movie? Well, stuff that comes afterwards I just personally resonate with more. Not saying everything after this is a better movie because they're not, I just subjectively like more things in Star Wars. Lord of the Rings I feel are overall better movies than the Star Wars movies, but I'd rather watch Star Wars because I like Star Wars better. I think A New Hope is a perfect movie. I just rather watch other Star Wars stories because I like them better. I hope that makes sense. At number 5, we have The Mandalorian Season 1. What I love about this season so much is that it stands alone as a Star Wars series. We don't see any returning characters, and besides Tatooine, we don't see any returning planets either. The season is entirely focused on telling a story about a Mandalorian and a Baby Yoda, and it does a great job at at that. And pretty much every supporting character in the season I find to be a pleasure to watch. The series struggles with 2 or 3 episodes that aren't so great, but the episodes that are good are really good. The story of this bounty hunter finding a family with this baby is the type of story that I'm a sucker for, and that's why it's so high on my list. At number 4, we have The Last Jedi. Now, this is the point in the video where people start disliking everything. Yes, Canto Bight sucks, I'm not gonna deny that, but I don't know, I just don't hate it like a lot of people do, I guess. And yes, Finn was poorly done in this movie, but I will always stand by the belief that The Rise of Skywalker sidelined him, not this movie. An entire half of this movie is focused on giving Finn a character arc. Just because it wasn't done well doesn't mean he was sidelined. Any scene that involves Rey, Luke, or Kylo, I passionately love. The dynamic between Rey and Kylo is the most interesting part of this trilogy, and this movie does 90% of the legwork. And this next comment will get a lot of hate, but I passionately love Luke's arc in this movie. It sends a powerful message about our heroes and how they can overcome failure. This movie struggles in a few places, but the stuff it doesn't struggle with, I love. At number 3, we have The Mandalorian Season 2. This season is just so much fun. The first 6 episodes for the most part are pure Star Wars fun with some genuinely great moments sprinkled in. The dynamic between Mando and Grogu continues to grow in the season, and it does so wonderfully. But where the season really shines for me are the last 2 episodes. Chapter 15 is my favorite piece of Star Wars television. The arcs that Mando and Mayfeld go through in this episode are perfect. And of course, the finale of the season is also fantastic. Seeing Luke again was great, sure, but it's the final moments between Mando and Grogu that make this season so great. Their goodbye, I feel, is the best scene that has come out of Disney Star Wars. And their reunion in the Book of Boba Fett is why I hate that show so much. But I can try my best to forget what happens so I can continue to love this show. In second place, we have Return of the Jedi. I'll be straight up honest, the reason why this movie is number 2 is because of the Luke and Vader scenes. The rest of the movie is fine, the Battle of Endor is pretty cool, and the rescue of Han Solo is pure Star Wars fun, but the Luke and Vader scenes are the best stuff in the entire Star Wars franchise. Vader's death and redemption exemplifies everything that Star Wars is about. When a movie has arguably my favorite scene in any movie ever that I've ever seen, that movie is bound to be high on a ranking list, and that movie is Return of the Jedi. And in first place, we have The Empire Strikes Back. Similar to A New Hope, this is a perfect Star Wars movie. There's literally nothing bad about this movie. The characters are perfect, the story is perfect, the world building is perfect, everything about this movie is perfect. Now, unlike A New Hope, I just really love watching this movie. I can be bored at times with A New Hope, but not this movie. This movie is my second favorite movie of all time, and it is also my favorite Star Wars movie of all time. Share your rankings down below and let me know why my ratings suck. Thank you everyone so much for watching another one of my videos. Don't forget to join the Glod Squad, and I will see you guys next time.